All right, let's get into this. Okay, Sargon of Akkad did a video on the Black Bloc protesters, basically who they are and stuff like that, and he kind of beat me to the punch. I've been wanting to do a thing on the Antifa and stuff like that for a while, and I just haven't got a chance. But after the recent events that have happened, I'm going to discuss a little bit what the Black Bloc is. It's made up of a whole bunch of different factions, but the Black basically represents anarchism, and depending on the way the flag is placed, if it's red on black or black on red, or shifted to one way or another, it means different things. For example, red on black with the angling to the left is the basically the Antifa. Angling to the right, I think, is the anarcho-communist. The green one is the anarcho. What was that one? Anarcho. Uh, like, I guess like environmentalist, whatever. White and black is the anarcho-pacifist. White and pink is the anarcho-queer. White, yellow and black is basically anarcho-capitalist. Yellow and blue, I think, is anarcho-nihilist. Yeah, I might be getting some of them wrong, but there's a whole faction of them. And the one thing they all have in common is that they're anarchists. Now, anarchy, like I've always said, is neither nor good nor bad. It's how you use it. But what I'm seeing now, and so I mean, it's the 28th day in January, and I think if you add up all of the bizarre stuff that happened in 2016, it's like we covered that in less than 3 weeks. Like I don't know about you, but boy, this is just completely bizarro world. But anyway, and something I totally predicted. I said in my 2017 predictions that there would be basically a rise of like the, we'll call it the Bolshevik 2.0 or whatever. And we're going to see this probably well throughout the summer, unless they take out George Soros. That's about, because he's, again, you follow the money. It always leads back to that douchebag. And if you don't know who George Soros is, then once you know who he is, you understand a lot of how these protesters are fueled. The radicals themselves might be genuine, so to speak, genuine radicals, if that's whatever. But the thing about them is that that all these flags, they cost money. All these hoodies and masks and T-shirts and stuff like that, bussing people around, it costs money. So the organization behind these groups is basically leftist organizations, radical leftist organizations that are usually funded by George Soros. So where did it all start? How did it start? Well, I think Sargon of Akkad did a better video on that, so I'll just leave it with him. But it's not new. The anarcho-communist and anarcho and Antifa and stuff like that, they go way back. They basically go back, you might as well say, to the Bolshevik Revolution and probably before. So when you see these things, like they do have a rooted history. These are organizations. They do have worldwide effect. But one thing that is for certain is that the majority are young men. Like anything, crime is usually a young man's sport. And like I've always said about alienated men in society, is that men need a cause. They always need a cause. And if they can't find a good cause, they'll pick a bad one. So if you blow up the Middle East, for example, and destabilize it, you're going to get a whole bunch of basically jihadists. They come out like the Hydra. Hell Hydra. They worship one idea. You can't reason with them, you can't bargain with them, and they're loyalists. And you know what I've said about loyalists. The only way to really do away with a loyalist, you got to pretty much put them down. Not that I'm calling for anybody to go and do any violence, but that's how dedicated they are to their cause, misguided or not. Well, the Antifa and stuff like that, they're the same kind of mindset of this completely intolerant, in the name of tolerance type of thing. They believe everything they do is just. They do believe that by tearing down the system, they will have true equality by basically no property ownership. Nobody can have anything more than anybody else. So in other words, it's an extreme form of jealousy, I guess. But these Antifa, there are women amongst them, but they again, they go for this extreme equality, but yet the women don't usually get very high up on the ranks of these Antifa, because, again, these are very extreme people. They are normally fairly cowardish. They swarm you like like a bunch of bees, and they'll hit you and then they'll run away. They never take anybody on one-on-one. So in that sense, yes, they're very organized for that, and they also understand the strength in numbers of when they're out there damaging property and doing stuff like that. That if they're in large numbers, they're less likely to be captured by the police, whatever it might be. Now, these guys are starting to infiltrate into like the feminist movements and stuff. It's amazing what the feminist movement, the third wave feminist movement, which is now moving what I call into the fourth wave feminism, just accept all degeneracy no matter what. To them, these are the good guys. To them, that these are the underdogs, the ones that are misunderstood. To everybody else, they're just a bunch of lunatics, and they are. Now, the concept of the anti-fascist or anti-fascista, whatever, is not nothing new. But the thing is that the they target anything that disagrees with them as a Nazi or a fascist. So it doesn't matter if you are a Nazi or a fascist. If you're not, it doesn't matter. To them, they view you as that. So disagreeing with them, you pay a price. And that's the way these people operate. Now, the amount of people that have been Trump supporters that have been attacked, some have been murdered. The divide and conquer in the United States right now is at a never seen before. Even during the what you call it, the sexual revolution and the cultural revolution and all that of the '60s, and the hippie era, the flower power and all that stuff. Even as radical as that was, it's not the same type of radical. Although that is the spawning birth of a lot of this, but the thing is again the Antifa and stuff. They're even older than that. They've been around a lot longer. And obviously, being 2017, we're at the 100-year anniversary of the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, which is also birthplace of this. So when I said you're going to see the Bolsheviks 2.0, that's what I was talking about. Now, the mindset of these people is complete, utter madness. It is something, and the problem is that it's being the mainstream media basically. They did the same thing with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, same kind of concept, same type of people doing the same type of things, same shit, different name, right? They all kind of go, at the end of the day, they're all doing the same thing. They really don't believe in rule of law. They believe in anarchy. They really do want to tear down society. Now, the thing is that you have the mainstream media out there that always kind of, it's like, oh my God, well, the Black Lives Matter, which again funded by George Soros. Again, usually these organizations like Black Lives Matter probably started up as a legitimate thing. Okay, but then again, something I've been really harping on. I really want people to look in Soviet-style ideological subversion, Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals, and the Hegelian dialectic problem-reaction solution. When you understand those three things, you understand a lot of what you're seeing, how it's orchestrated, and then you can pick up there's a pattern to it. So yes, you're looking at the Antifa over here, and you're looking at the anarcho-communists over here, but you're looking at the same people, funded by the same thing, doing pretty much the same thing with a slightly, different angle of attack, but the goal is the same, is to, order from chaos, right? The Masonic order from chaos, like Henry Kissinger would say. Again, another scumbag in history. Will these douchebags ever just kick off? But the thing is that these people, they go around attacking Trump supporters. I'm not saying there's no Trump supporters that have ever done anything bad, but it's very heavily, whenever you see a Trump supporter beaten up or whatever, or attacked, it's pretty much the left that is attacked. The left is turning violent. It's going into Bolshevik Trotsky mode type of thing right now. Tear it all down. That's what they're going into right now. And I said this early in January in my prediction, 2017 prediction. I didn't think we'd see it till about spring, but if they're going to get this early of a jump on it, well. So what am I talking about? Well, we saw a kind of a glimpse of it in Occupy Wall Street, where Occupy Wall Street had an awesome message. Anybody know what it was? No, because of the anarcho-capitalists, the anarcho-communists, the Antifa, the Black Bloc protesters. The Black Bloc is like any other group, for example, the alt-right. Well, the Black Bloc has a similarity to the alt-right, where it's a big umbrella of ideas, so each one's taking it at a different angle, but they all agree on a basic principle of anarchism. Where the alt-right is they take the basic principle of civic nationalism and ethno-nationalism. So these are the two, the glue. That's the glue that binds it all together. But getting back to the Black Bloc, I'll do a thing on the right later on. But the thing with the Black Bloc and the radical feminist groups, if you want to see where the real money is, it's in the feminist groups. It's throughout it's government structure basically. Pretty much everything we have in society is engineered around third wave feminism, coming from the government. And people leech on to the third wave feminism bandwagon very easily. For example, you might as well say the left has adopted radical Islam. Uh, the refugees or refugees, whatever you want to call them over there in Europe, can do no wrong. And if a woman is raped by a refugee, that's okay because white men do it too. That's the reasoning they have, and their real enemy isn't like they can't process the danger. They basically look as the real enemy is the angry white cisgendered male. That is the main enemy of them. And when you hear these people running up and down the streets, whether the black blocs or the feminists yelling, death to white people and fuck white people and stuff like that, you really understand the deepness of their brainwashed religion that they're in. And they do take it like a religion. And if you view it like that, you understand the radicalness you're actually dealing with. It's very dogmatic. So you've got the mainstream media out there. Every time you see a Trump protester beaten up or something, really, he probably shouldn't have been there, or she probably shouldn't have been there. The Black Lives Matter burned down their own communities, which it's usually people bust in from other communities by George Soros funded. Forget the name of the bus company that they use. And the Democrats and all that in the States, they bust them in, and then they'll say things like, well, we know what they did was wrong, but it's because they're repressed and because of white supremacy and all, and it just goes on and on. And then, of course, you start seeing the real radicalists. The nice thing about Trump's election is that it was kind of like what I call, it was like it flushed out the groundhogs. It was like basically throwing a firecracker in a groundhog hole and seeing all the groundhogs pop out of their holes. In other words, it exposed the radical for what it was. We saw this on the Women's March, where I think it was in Calgary, where Sheila Gunn Reid, for example, from Rebel News Media. Now, whether you like Rebel News or not is not the issue here. You have a woman that was assaulted by a man at a women's march. Just let that sink in. And the women, the radical leftist women, maybe they're not all radical, but that bias of women were more rushing to protect the guy who punched her. Well, he punched her camera, and right beside her was another Canadian press, the Canadian press or Canadian media press or whatever, photographer, a journalist. Nothing, says nothing on this. You think this would be a huge story? Says nothing. Why do they not say anything? Well, it's simple. It's the same reason why the mainstream media didn't cover hardly any of the violence whatsoever during the Disrupt J20 inauguration, is because they know by showing this, it shows how crazy their side really is. Now, when the people aren't stupid. In the masses, people can be dumb. Yes, that's true. But the individuals usually get it after time if you can put evidence in front of them to show them what the radical ideologies are. And there was a news organization, I don't know if they're still around, they were just no comment news. And they would just get the reporters go around or whatever with a camera. They would say nothing. They would just film an event and let you decide for yourself. And I thought that was just a brilliant, I don't know if they're still around, but I used to see their videos pop up from time to time. And they'd go, to protests, they'd go here, they'd go there, whatever. And I thought, how non-biased of a news report is that? Here, just look, watch, and decide. You know what I mean? It was just brilliant. I loved it. But they at least covered stuff. You know what I mean? Whereas the mainstream media, all the women's march on Washington, look at all the dirt and garbage and everything they just left behind. You know what I mean? It's just, that was so disgraceful. And there was a lot of women I seen on my Facebook saying, you don't speak for, that's the new hashtag, Women's March, you don't speak for me. There's a lot of women that are rejecting the Madonnas and the Ashley Judds, and but the thing is what I like about it is that when you expose that, it does polarize. But I've always said people you take 80% of people are moderate. You can sway them one way, you can sway them the other. You just got to provide them evidence. So you don't even really have to have much of an argument. You just have to provide the evidence. And 10% are radical on the left, 10% are radical on the right. In any group, this is on whether we're talking the left, we're talking the right. It doesn't really matter. There's always 10%, radical. Now, when you understand this, this is why you don't really need to pick sides, because, well, you need to pick principle, not sides. So what you're seeing is a strange thing going on, where principle is now becoming the subversion, where even the people that are brainwashed by the schooling system and everything that to be leftist are now questioning questioning their identity. Now, one thing I've always said, and you've heard me say it many times, people who have an identity crisis of any sort are in conflict. Now, when you believe your entire life the leftist narrative or a right-wing narrative or whatever, and then all of a sudden you see your principles front and center being basically delivered in a very toxic message, well, that puts your own value system on the chopping block now, does it? Which creates, people get confused. They don't know where to go. This is also kind of dangerous too, because this opens up avenues that normally sane people would probably not go down, and I'll get into that a little bit later, of something that I call the snap. You've heard me refer to it in what I call the 10th Crusade over there in Europe, where you're going to see, like literally the 10th Crusade just broil out in the streets. I'm still predicting London to be or the surrounding areas of London to be like the 20,000 on 20,000. I'll be conservative with the numbers. It might be more like 150,000 on 150,000, 2 million on a million, whatever. Guys just brawling it out in the middle of the streets. These guys will be completely radicalized in one side of the ideology and the other side of the ideology. How do I know this? Well, I don't know the date and time. I don't know where and when. But I know this by history. Because one thing history teaches us, that pretty much any history book you pick up, any history book, when you open up, the first character you're going to run into was a radical of their time, regardless of what their stance was. History is written by radicals, about radicals, and not the moderate people. The moderates fade away as the masses in history. They're never the radical. Now, what constitutes radical? Well, that can be debated. But usually the reason why it's in a history book is because it was a radical idea of its time. So what do radicals also do? Radical begets radical. So what I've been saying all along for a good while now, when you see this snap coming, just get out of the way. Don't partake in it, because you're really exercising, your efforts are being wasted on something that you can't change ideologically. You can stomp it out, you can challenge it, you can fight it, but that's all. You're just, at this point, you're just fighting fire with fire, and you're just going to burn everything down. So that's not the right approach, in my opinion. So am I saying protesting is pointless? No, protesting is fine. But if you know the counter-protests are going to be coming in, or like in a subversion program, we saw this with the G20 in Toronto a few years back, where the RCMP had agent provocateurs, basically RCMP agents provoking violence at the G20. This is common. Governments do this, and the RCMP was caught red-handed. Now, these officers, I think, should be shot for treason. Why? Because you shouldn't be destabilizing your own country. That to me is the most shameful thing. And the people that put them up to it, just so we can get an extra police state, no, same thing. Now, that said, the one thing about these black bloc protesters, organized, yes, they are. Radicalized, yes, they are. Hypersensitive, yes, they are. Easily triggered, yes, they are. Stupid, yes, they are. So they're easy to infiltrate. And usually, and Sargon of Akkad, who I don't always agree with Sargon and everything, but I like the way he thinks. He does try to approach everything with a logical point of view, and I'm nodding my head yes to most of what he says most of the time. And one of the things he talked about was who makes up the black bloc is basically, like you say, young men. Young men make up the black bloc. But these people in general, the men and the women, in their normal everyday lives, these are usually what you would call hardcore leftists. They tend to volunteer at soup kitchens and stuff, which I applaud them. I'd shake their hand for that. If you're going to help your community in that way, I'm always for that. They tend to be teachers and doctors and the people you would normally associate occupations of the left, social workers, etc., etc. They're made up of those kind of people. The majority would be probably your typical student, your what I used to refer to as the communist student, which is the black bloc protester. And what I used to call a communist student, you've seen these guys in Occupy Wall Street. Now they all dressed in black, that type of thing. They've kind of taken a bit of a different, more different uniformal take on things, where they all have black masks and hoodies and everything. They're all dressed in black. But these are the type of people that you'll see at colleges wearing the the Che Guevara hat or Che shirt or the CCCP hammer and sickle shirt. It's those people. And I remember this guy Dave years ago. One of my friends had a bit of a crush on him because he seemed like a kind of a bit of a hippie dude. And he dressed in the army jacket with the peace sign on one side, the anarchy patch on the back, that type of thing. And we were sitting there having a beer, and he was a bit of a burnout, if you ask me. But my friend, she thought he was cute, and he was a bit of a hippie dude, and she was kind of more hippie-ish herself. So, but then when we started talking, one thing, the theme, like this guy, like he came off as such a nice guy, but then he started talking about protests and stuff like that, and he would bring up valid points about why he would protest, but then he would go into this kind of anarchist kind of rant about that the only way to protest was kind of through violence. And I was like, well, that's where I got the concept. As he was sitting there in his army jacket, with the peace sign and anarchy sign on the back with his CCCP shirt on. And then I started noticing the trend of people that dressed like that, thought like that. And basically he was an anarcho-capitalist. And that was the first time I probably ever really heard, or anarcho, he was an anarcho-capitalist at that time. And I was like, that's contradiction. And well, it's not. No, anarcho-capitalist isn't really a contradiction so much, but anarcho-communist is a contradiction. But to be an anarcho-capitalist with a CCCP shirt on, Soviet Empire there, I'm like, that's. I mean, these people are walking contradictions. The left is walking contradictions, and this is why they double, triple down, quadruple down on their radical ideology. That's what makes them dangerous. Why? Because their value system is at stake here. So in other words, they either have to admit they're wrong and accept that and move away from that, which is their whole identity, or they've got to fight tooth and nail to save what they believe is, again, in their mind, the right way to go, which makes them dangerous. Anybody suffering a crisis like that of identity, especially when they're radicalized. So the people, like, for example, ISIS, a lot of people don't understand how these people come to be. The people like that fight for ISIS, for example, these are alienated men. If you want to alienate men in your society, you blow the shitballs out of the country with a bunch of A-10s. Never let anybody know what a normal world is. Let them grow up in a Mad Max world. Then alienate men to the point where they have no wives, no families, and no cause. Then just turn on the stove. Let it fester a bit. Put the recipe there. Turn on the stove. Next thing you know, radical ideology will take hold very easily in an environment like that, and it will thrive. Why? Because men always need a cause. Now, if you have single men in your society and a large number of single men in societies, you have a dangerous society. Why? Because men need a cause. So if they don't have family, which are the most stable men in your society, statistics show that the most stable men in society are family men. Why? Because they're worried they have something else to live for. Now, these guys, they don't have really much to live for. That's what they're lost souls at this point. So they're ripe for the picking for any sort of leftist or fascistic upper left ideology. And that's what you're going to start to see is the upper left fighting with the upper left. If you look at the Nolan scale, left versus right, libertarian versus authoritarian, because there's left and right and up and down. So you have conservative on the right, communist on the left, liberal and conservative in the center, extreme. Okay, I'll start it over. Sorry. If we're going to go from the center, a center position to the left is basically a liberal. You move one notch, you're going to be a socialist. You move another notch, you're going to be a communist. You move another notch, you're going to be a basically a progressive slash Marxist. And I'm kind of leapfrogging because progressive now, what it means is basically that's the new communist. I know by the dictionary term, no, progressive is nor right nor left. It's really, it doesn't help humanity or not. But the way it's, like all these people consider themselves progressives. And that even if they're not with the dictionary term of it, the ideology is more communistic, more social engineering, cultural Marxist, etc. Now, if you move one more left from the Marxist, you pretty much just have people dead in a ditch somewhere. Now, they can also move up and down, but we'll go back to the center again, and now we're going to move to the right. So, center of right, you're going to be a conservative. Now, if you move a little more right to that, you're going to be a libertarian. If you move a little bit more right to that, you'll be an anarchist. You move even more right than that, you'll probably be a Satanist. Now, up and down, if you're going towards liberty, you'll move down, less authority, no matter whether you're like say fiscally conservative, socially liberal, that type of me. I'm more in that kind of realm, but I tend to be more on the right uh, on certain issues. So the more down you go, the more libertarian you go. Now you can have authoritarian left, you can have authoritarian right. Now if you start going more authoritarian, you start going up on the scale. And so you can be authoritarian, like a neocon type of thing, which is supposed to be right wing, but it's really at some point, once you start getting authoritarian, you boomerang back to the left. So most people don't realize that the left fights the left because it's just basically radical people, just mix in whichever radical ideology, and then they're just looking for somebody. They're always looking for an enemy. And one thing about these Black Bloc protesters is they're always looking to basically fight for the underdog type of thing, the poverty class, the migrants, whatever. So they can never see anything objectively. That's why with the migrant crisis over in Europe, I mean, you see these radical politicians doubling down on, oh no, we're going to keep the borders open, and diversity is our strength, and like there's just no objectivity to them whatsoever. With the crime rates skyrocketing in pretty much all European countries where the migrants are flooding in, the rapes are skyrocketing. It's just, and then of course the economic cost of these people coming in to take care of all these people sitting on welfare. $1 million a year. It's almost impossible. It's an insolvent situation, which, when that starts to crumble and collapse, will breed the typical response that you see in history. When we've gone as batshit crazy left as we can go, there's always a violent swing to the right. Now, that is going to come as a snap in the night, and I'm seeing the canaries in the coal mine now. I've been talking about this. We're going to go back to America. We're not going to look at Europe right yet. It's going to be more bloody in Europe than it is in America. Right now, the United States, in my opinion, is about to go into a civil war light. But they're also going into Bolshevik Revolution 2.0. Why? Because the left has just basically had its power taken away by the Trump campaign. And if you want to put it, but they're basically, Trump has been elected not because, like, the left, the media, they have no clue. And at first I thought it was just their narrative. But the people at the top know why they've been unseated from power. And maybe they put Trump in there as a kind of, opposition, controlled opposition. That is a possibility, but it looks like it was more of a miscalculation and Trump accidentally won. I think what they were probably trying to do was they figured that they could put out a radical, which Trump is a radical. There's no doubt about that. He's a radical. And I think what they were thinking was, if we put this out, people will reject it so much, the Democrats will win, Hillary Clinton will get it, no problem. But then the Trump train started to roll, and people were filling up the train, and they weren't expecting that. So then they did probably the stupidest thing they could have done, is have their own party turn on Trump. So the GOP turned on Trump as well. The media was against, and the people, again, that 80% of people in the middle who are paying attention were looking at this saying, okay, the media's against Trump, the bankers against Trump, and that's what it really does come down to at the end of the day. And Trump was saying the right things, such as drain the swamp. That's restoring of rule of law is the main reason why Trump got elected. The left has no clue of it. They have no clue of this. So every attempt to link Trump to white supremacy, racist, bigot, xenophobe, homophobe, the same arguments over regurgitated. And again, when you look at these Antifa and all that, the Black Lives Matter and the third wave feminists, they have their slogans that they yell out. This is no different than any saying the Lord's Prayer for a Christian. Or Catholic, you know what I mean, like that type of thing. This is no more than reciting the Hadiths for a Muslim. This is no more than reading the Talmud for the Jews. It's the same thing. It's displaced from those religions, conventional religions, into leftist ideology. Now, the thing is because they're so hard in their ideology, they couldn't see this coming. They had no clue. They couldn't see this coming. New York Times with their fake news out there. Hillary Clinton's going to win by 98%. Just looking at it from a logical point of view, you're telling me you can only come up with that number. Like, it wasn't even close to believable, even from somebody who, with utopianistic leftist eyes. They probably thought, no, that can't be a real poll. There's something wrong with that. So the polls were right off. They were off by a lot. And then what happened is, now if Trump is the real deal, Trump is a doer. He's a man of action. And I mean, again, the amount of work he's done in 30 days is pretty much what Obama pretty much accomplished on the Obama side. On that side, they probably did about the same amount of work in 8 years. Trump has been working like report of like 20-hour days kind of thing. This man hasn't taken a day off since he's like, man, this guy's like right to it. The left can't respond to that. It's too fast. They're not used to that. They're used to this really slow, drawn-out bureaucracy. They can't counter, and they don't know where he's going next, which makes makes everything, stirs everything up. And yes, he's a divisionary icon. There's no doubt about that. Love him or hate him, he's no different than say Mussolini or Joseph Stalin, that type of thing. Love him or hate him. But the thing with Trump, again, whether he's a good guy or bad guy, if he's doing what the people voted for him to do, he's actually a good guy. If he can get even a part of that done, which some of it he's already, okay, he's reneged on some stuff, sure, but he's going in the direction of the people that voted for him wanted. The people that don't want him, well, obviously going in the opposite direction of them. But the one thing, and this is something that I think within 2 years, the majority of the left will be pro-Trump. Because of the violence that's going to be probably taking place this summer, and who knows if they're going to. The economists out there are saying that they're going to throw the economy around the later half of the year in 2017. Now, if we get a one world currency, then the Rothschilds won, and Trump was just a puppet like everybody else. If not, the Rothschilds are going to burn, but so will the world. But we'll rebuild it out of the ashes of rule of law, which is better. So Trump got hired to basically drain the swamp, get rid of the corruption in Washington. The problem is I don't know what, I'm just going to throw an arbitrary number out there, but it could be up to 90% corruption in Washington, let alone every other parliament around the world or whatever. So the corruption is so deep. You're talking about an entire government structure that has to be completely collapsed and imploded and done away with. You're talking about tens of thousands, possibly even a few million people that have to go to jail for corruption, for the banking system, for the the laws, the illegal wars, the weapons, the war on drugs with the drug running and stuff like that. We're talking tons of government people. That can't happen overnight. So no matter how, because it would just lead into a civil war, an actual shooting civil war in like 5 minutes. Now the thing is as this is going on, Trump's going to play out how he's going to play out, whether he's going to be a good guy, he's going to be a bad guy. I think we're going to get some wins, some losses. Again, I'm a Canadian, I'm watching this, and I know my country's about to hurt big time under Justin Trudeau because his economic plan is so bad that by the year 2050, we're going to be at least $1.5 trillion in debt. That means kids born today are going to be paying forever, taxes forever, and increasing interest on the deficit. So I know his economic plan is bad. Now, there's another problem too, because what you have going on in the world is not so much just left versus right, but you have nationalism, civic nationalism vs globalism. So communism versus fascism, same thing. Same thing. It's just turned into something different. We just call it something different. But basically, this is people that want autonomy in their countries, to control their immigration, to control their economy, to control their currency and stuff like that. And basically it all comes down to the Rothschild central bankers and stuff like that at the end of the day. But, George Soros, Henry Kissinger, Zbigniew Brzezinski, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, that world order versus humanity, basically that. So when you understand that, and there's a few other, well, there's a lot others in there, but these factions are basically now being rejected by the populists. And you have to say that when you watch these protesters out there, okay, they have no clue what it's really about. Like this women's march, most of the women that showed up there showed up thinking that it was a women's march, that this was for equality for women, whatever. And okay, fair enough. Your typical leftist theme, which in itself I have no problem with. I have no problem with ideologies if they're not violent, meaning physical violence. Ideologies that call for violence, okay, you got to call it out. But again, we see an absentee. Again, the mainstream media right now, why they're so afraid of fake news is because the fake news keeps calling out their BS, such as, we don't hear you denouncing the violence that is coming on Twitter, Facebook, from your news anchors, from everyone that are condoning the violence, or you just simply don't cover it all together. And people are seeing this and they're saying, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. You get a Trump supporter that does something stupid, it's on the news for 6 weeks. You get, tens of thousands of Trump supporters beaten up by these radical leftist anti-Trumpers, not a word. You know what I mean? Not a word. And people are starting to see that, even the people on the left. In fact, Trump's during the election, okay, had more Democrats vote for him than any other time in history. I mean, when people jump their ideology to the other side, they don't do it because it's a safer place to go. They do it because their side, their ship is sinking. It's radical. They're getting off the Titanic. Now, the rest, think of these radical leftists out there, like the band that was playing on the deck of the Titanic as the ship went under the waves. You know, because it's a big ship, it's never really going to go down, right? And they can't handle it. They don't know how to handle reality. That's why you're seeing the mental breakdowns. Like I say, a lot of these SJWs out there, social justice warriors, for those who don't know, are basically people who cannot deal with reality. And they all flock together into degeneracy because they find safety in that. They find safety in those numbers. And they, you know, it shields their ideology from truth, from anybody, you know, challenging them. These people don't like to be challenged. That's why you've got that girl, you know, freaking out, yelling, no, whenever Trump's announced as the 45th president of the United States. They can't deal with reality. They have no concept of it. Therefore, like pulling heroin away from a heroin addict, you're going to get a violent backlash because they want their fix. Well, these leftists are the same thing. Now, some of them can be saved to a degree, but not very many of them. So what happens in a subversion program? Well, you have demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and then the normalization period. Now, these people are what I call useful idiots. There's a term that goes back, you know, a good while. And they get used in the problem reaction solution all the time, employing tactics of Saul Alinsky, the rules for radicals. I did a thing on Saul Alinsky a while back, so you know, you just go research the rules for radicals and you'll get the idea. And also you'll see the connections with Hillary Clinton was basically, which the irony is that Trump used the rules for radicals against Clinton, who was a Saul Alinsky protege. You know, you know, that is irony. That is irony. Taken out by her own ideology. Pretty funny. Or own tactics, so to speak. So you got all these people that are, you know, basically were given for 8 years free reign to terrorize university campuses and march on people and scold people and get people fired. And that's still going on to a degree, but that's switching. The other shoe is about to drop. Now, the canary in the coal mine I was talking about is that when you get this, you know, when we've gone as far crazy left as we can go, there's a violent clash back to the right, historically speaking. So what's it going to take the form of? Well, right now, alt-righters. You have alt-right, alt-light, and you've got the new right, which is coming out, which is, again, much like the black bloc protesters. They're just spin-offs of the same ideology. They're opposed to the other ideology. They're the other side of the coin. And where I'm starting to see this, strangely enough, I guess because we're in the digitized age and you know, there's cameras everywhere, is that, for example, when you've seen the guy going to work with these black bloc protesters, anti-Trump protesters, the guy just wants to go to work. Now, there's nothing nothing worse than an idea than trying to get in the way of a working class man. Why? Because a working class man doesn't have time for your leftist bullshit. They don't have time for right-wing bullshit. They just don't have time because they got a family to feed. They got, you know, they got to get to work or they're going to lose their job. So they can't, you know, and it's usually guys that work jobs where, oh, well, there was protesters, so, you know, I couldn't make it into work on time. And they usually have a boss that say, well, why don't you just punch the fuckers in the head and move around them? Well, that's what this guy did. He's like, get out of my way. I'm going to work. And they're like, well, no, we're protesting. And he just, anyway, you know, one guy tried to push him, bad idea. He just, you know, he put it to them. So, you know, and that type of thing. So that guy, you're never going to get him into the radical left or right. But he's just not going to put up with any of the bullshit. And that is the working class man. The man who has to pay for all these leftists on welfare out in the street and finding out that, you know what, all these leftists that go in get indoctrinated by the universities and don't want to pay their student loans, which I do blame the banks for this as well, giving student loans to people who can never possibly pay it back, which got us into the 2008 crisis, such as the housing thing, you know, giving loans to people that can't pay back. Now, Trump is going against this. He's now taking that away. And of course, the left is out there, oh, it's making it harder for people to get homes. No, it means that the taxpayer is not going to be on the hook for people who can't pay for things. If you can't pay for it, you can't have it. Tell that to the left. They don't understand because they think everything's a human right and should be free. Now, that's one type of guy. He's not going to be out in the streets, but he's not going to put up with that. So that guy, you're not going to bullshit him anymore. And when it comes around time for him to vote again, Okay, this guy is going to vote against that. The more authoritarian against the left at this point, the more the right. Now, in the future, it might swing back to the right. Now, remember, we have to go back to the 1960s and stuff like that, through the Cultural Revolution, Sexual Revolution, all that stuff, to kind of see where this all kind of really manifested as one group. It all links off from there, you know. But even though the ideology goes back further, and yes, this does have to do with there is the Zionist neocon agenda there, the radical leftists. We do know it's always usually Steins and Bergs promoting all this. I'm not saying it's every Jew, but we see all like Gloria Steinem, the radical feminist, George Soros, radical, philanthropist that basically arms all this chaos around the world, including arming neo-Nazis to overthrow the government of Ukraine on behalf of the U.S. government. Henry Kissinger, again. Zygmunt Brzezinski, so Steinsbergs, so to speak. These people are always at the top, and now they're really scared because their ideology once again is failing. Every time we try any form of communism, it always fails. The question is how many people die in the process. Now, I'm not trying to demonize all Jews here, but you have to look at, like what you call her, Barbara Lerner Spectra, with the anti-white stuff. Noel Ignatieff with the anti-white stuff, the white privilege, all this stuff that is demonized a group. Mainly the most demonized group in the United States, Canada, and in the West is a single straight white male. And they're starting to turn angry. They're not angry. And the left is about to experience something that, again, that careful what you wish for. Now, when I look at the United Nations Agenda 21 and United Nations Agenda 2030, all this stuff is orchestrated that we're seeing now through protests and stuff like that. And you understand that this is where it all comes from. And again, it's always the same thing, and it's always the same type of radicals. And it always seems to come from the same group. And that's why I bring that up. And again, so you can call me racist, bigot, xenophobe, anti-Semite, whatever. It is what it is. And it'll play out how it's going to play out. And it usually plays out not in favor of these radical leftists. But what they're about to experience is going to be the right lash. We heard about the white lash when Trump got voted in. No, a right lash. So people on the right are now going to radicalize against them. And the proof is in the pudding. Gavin McInnes, he basically, a week before the pluraballs, the ball that they went to, he was talking about, he goes, get one of these little punks in front of me, I'm going to punch him. And what did he do? He punched one. And the guy was stunned, shocked. He didn't know how to respond to that. Richard Spencer, again, because Richard Spencer is a racist and a bigot, these hit and run, again, these cowards, they don't fight people one-on-one. They sucker punch you from behind, that type of thing, and they sucker punched him. Now, whether you like the guy or not, the media is out there saying, well, it's okay that you did that because he's a racist and bigot. Maybe not so directly, but they imply it. It's like, well, we know we shouldn't do that, but they and of course you've got the lady out there, with the squirt gun, the teacher in front of her classroom with a, like a screen of Trump on there going, die. Now that woman is now being cracked down on, and of course there's a whole bunch of people making assassination threats against Trump, stuff like that. You didn't see this with Obama. You saw maybe a handful of white supremacists doing that. And the white supremacists, the true white supremacists, okay, those dogs are still on chains. The neo-Nazis, those dogs are still on chains. They haven't been released yet because they're still not socially acceptable by the right. I mean, look at what happened with Richard Spencer when the people did the ZKL, which I think a couple of the people that did the ZKL at that conference were Jews. They did it as I don't know if they did it as a joke or a way to harpoon the alt-right. Okay, fine, whatever. Well, now you got the new right. So people are still craving to get away from the crazy social engineering of the left. So this goes on. Okay, so Richard Spencer is now, okay, everybody that identifies as alt-right is now a Nazi. They found the way to make the connection. So maybe Richard Spencer is on it. Well, it doesn't matter. I don't think he is. But the thing is that Richard Spencer is not a radical. Maybe a radical in the sense of as an ideologue, but he's not violent yet. And one's like him. But now, okay, there's another thing that happened with Lauren Southern. I mean, Lauren Southern, she's been attacked a ton of times by the left, physically. And whatever. But you get it that like the left is very radical. Like they see a woman and these guys will beat up on her because she's the Nazi, she's the whatever. And this girl is anything but that. I mean, I think you'd call her alt-right at best, new right. She's a conservative woman. That's what she is. So when they're attacking people like that, okay, and then of course you had Sheila Gunn Reid, so you're allowed to attack women. The CBC didn't cover this at all. Allowed to attack women if they're on the right. So now the right sees this. Now, there's one thing about the right wing versus the left wing. The left wing, yes, they've got George Soros money in there and Rothschild money and whatever, from the Democratic Party, and they've got the media on their side. But what they don't have, okay, is conviction. They don't have this. These people, they go with the flow, really, of, hiding amongst themselves. Whereas the right steps out very aggressively when they do step out. Now, how they're going to step out, well, you see it in little lashes like that. And I'll bring up another one. Blonde in the Belly of the Beast, she was at Milo University, strangely enough, with Milo Yiannopoulos was going to have a speak there. And there was a conservative guy, or a Trump supporter, whatever, and basically he was attacked by a bunch of these Antifa whatever. And it was caught by many angles. There was police there. They even witnessed it. There's so many witnesses, whatever. This guy pulled out a gun and shot somebody. Now, you would think that would be the golden nugget for the mainstream media, to get a Trump supporter shooting an anti-Trump supporter. That would be exactly what they would want, but they don't cover it. Why don't they cover it? Well, first off, the footage shows two things. Number one, guns do work in self-defense in gun-free zones. So maybe he'll get a fine for that, I don't know. But that this guy was attacked and attacked and attacked, and then responded, showing that the Second Amendment works, but showed restraint and no collateral damage. So I don't know if the other guy died from the shot. If he did so, well, good riddance. But it also shows that the right is willing to fight. And this is also, with Gavin McInnes doing the punch, you're going to see more stuff like that. And the left don't know how to do that. Now, the other thing is that the right is usually more armed. The right is usually more, they're in better shape. They're usually more tactical minded, because usually a lot of them are law enforcement, military, or veterans or whatever. And they know how to fight. They know how to fight. I'm not saying all of them. Gavin McInnes obviously didn't know how to throw a punch. But they're now willing to do that. It's like, well, you know what? We've tried to debate you. And when we tried to debate you, you try to shut it down by, just blah, blah, going into belligerence yelling. So we can't reach you with logic. Can't reach you with reason. And then now you're resorting to, if they're a Trump supporter, you can beat his ass. You can beat him up. And of course, that Trump supporter well, they called him a Trump supporter, but there was an autistic guy that was kidnapped. Now, whether that was staged or not, I know people, whatever. You never know. That could be playing in the divide and conquer. But to take an autistic, I don't think it is. I think it is the real thing. That autistic kid was taken by Black Lives Matter for 4 days. So the right is coming to the conclusion, you can't reason with these people. So in other words, they're going to become unreasonable. Now, the problem is the average right-winger you don't have to worry about, because most of them are like, well, there's no use going to these protests because you can't reach these people. We can reach them through things like what I'm doing now, like discussing whatever. But the ones that are a little bit more fired up, well, they're about to take the leashes off the neo-Nazis, the skinheads, the real far radical right, which is really upper nationalistic left. So you're going to basically have fascism versus communism again. Hitler versus Stalin. That's basically the same thing, because people mistake neo-Nazis as on the right. They're not on the right, they're on the left. If you look at them on the Nolan scale, these people are on the left. They're very authoritarian. They're very protectionist. They're very they're nationalist. They're whatever. So again, and I've talked about these guys coming out, and when they get released, the right's going to turn a blind eye to their crimes. Maybe not all of them, and whatever, but it won't matter. Once they get that signal that they can go out and do that like the left is doing, then the left is going to have its ass handed to it very brutally, and they're not ready for that. And they're just, these people will be terrified. That's why I think the so-called Civil War light that you will see in you're definitely going to have a race war, civil war in the United States over Trump. The economic collapse, I think, because the bankers are going to try to, I don't know what's going to happen first. I think Trump is getting ready to do the preemptive. He knows that the bankers are going to try to collapse the economy on him, and which will collapse the world economy. And that's going to be a very, very violent day. And I think Trump's going to get everything in place and then hit the button when they're not ready and collapse the economy, trigger the collapse You see him setting up for it right now. That's why I tell people, put food away. Because you're going to have to be able to ride that one out. That's why he's deregulating, so that bang, we could just collapse it, go insolvent, rebuild the country, and all these bankers and everything go down with it. So you can imagine the violence that they're going to want out of this. Now, while people are fighting each other, like Henry Kissinger said, when they're fighting each other, they're not fighting us. But the problem is the right knows who's doing this. So this is where I call the hellhounds, hellhounds versus Hydra. I know I'm running out of time here, but I'll just wrap this up pretty quick. And I've talked about them several times in the past, so you guys know, who follow my channel know who I'm talking about. But when these hellhounds come out, again, watch for politicians. We've already seen quite a few politician hits and basically assassination attempts just in January and December and January. There've been quite a few hits around the world, but watch for it like throughout the summer. It's going to be just banker after banker executed. It's going to be politician after politician executed. But the thing is now we're caught between the radical left and the radical right, so to speak. But really, we're caught between two radical left groups that are coming out. Now, the good news out of this is that I think it's going to be short-lived, because the radical so-called right, the neo-Nazis and stuff like that, when they start coming out, the state will crack down on that, because they're like, whoa, because those guys can turn on us. And that will stabilize. And then you'll see maybe a little bit more civility right after. You're always going to have radicals every time in history. They just take new forms. We call them black bloc protesters now. They called them Bolsheviks 100 years ago. They called them something else 1,000 years ago. But these ideologies are the same people all the time. They're just, they just fill up with, they're empty vessels that fill up with radical ideology. So hopefully, I know this discussion can go very, very far and very, very deep, so I'll leave it at that. So if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation. Channel links down below. And next to that, rate, subscribe, share, comment, like, be true to yourself, be true to others, always do the right thing. And one last thing, keep in mind, once this plays out, the next group coming in, you're not going to like very much, and they're going to be just as radical. And yes, I will be fighting them as well. So anyway, have a great day, y'all. G'day, hi, and welcome. Alright, let's get into this. Okay, Sargon of Akkad did a video on the Black Bloc protesters, basically, who they are and stuff like that, and he kind of beat me to the punch. I've been wanting to do a thing on the Antifa and stuff like that for a while, and I just haven't got a chance. But after the recent events that have happened, I'm going to discuss a little bit what the Black Bloc is. It's made up of a whole bunch of different factions, but the Black basically represents anarchism, and depending on the way the flag is placed, if it's red on black or black on red, or shifted to one way or another, it means different things. For example, red on black with the angling to the left is basically the Antifa. Angling to the right, I think, is the anarcho-communist. The green one is the anarcho. What was that one? Anarcho. Like, I guess, like environmentalist, whatever. White and black is the anarcho-pacifist. White and pink is the anarcho-queer. White, yellow and black is basically anarcho-capitalist. Yellow and blue, I think, is anarcho-nihilist. Yeah, I might be getting some of them wrong, but there's a whole faction of them. And the one thing they all have in common is that they're anarchists. Now, anarchy, like I've always said, is neither nor good nor bad. It's how you use it. But what I'm seeing now, and so it's the 28th day in January, and I think if you add up all of the bizarre stuff that happened in 2016, it's like we covered that in less than 3 weeks. Like, I don't know about you, but boy, this is just completely bizarre world. But anyway, and something I totally predicted. I said in my 2017 predictions that there would be basically a rise of, like, the, we'll call it the Bolshevik 2.0 or whatever. And we're going to see this probably well throughout the summer, unless they take out George Soros. That's about, because he's, again, you follow the money. It always leads back to that douchebag. And if you don't know who George Soros is, then once you know who he is, you understand a lot of how these protesters are fueled. The radicals themselves might be genuine, so to speak, genuine radicals, if that's whatever. But the thing about them is that that all these flags, they cost money. All these hoodies and masks and T-shirts and stuff like that, bussing people around, it costs money. So the organization behind these groups is basically leftist organizations, radical leftist organizations that are usually funded by George Soros. So, where did it all start? How did it start? Well, I think Sargon of Akkad did a better video on that, so I just leave it with him. But it's not new. The anarcho-communists and anarcho and Antifa and stuff like that, they go way back. They basically go back, you might as well say, to the Bolshevik Revolution and probably before. So when you see these things, like they do have a rooted history. These are organizations. They do have worldwide effect. But one thing that is for certain is that the majority are young men. Like anything, crime is usually a young man's sport. And like I've always said about alienated men in society, is that men need a cause. They always need a cause. And if they can't find a good cause, they'll pick a bad one. So if you blow up the Middle East, for example, and destabilize it, you're going to get a whole bunch of basically jihadists. They come out like the Hydra. Hell Hydra. They worship one idea. You can't reason with them, you can't bargain with them, and they're loyalists. And you know what I've said about loyalists. The only way to really do away with a loyalist, you got to pretty much put them down. Not that I'm calling for anybody to go and do any violence, but that's how dedicated they are to their cause, misguided or not. Well, the Antifa and stuff like that, they're the same kind of mindset of this completely intolerant, in the name of tolerance type of thing. They believe everything they do is just. They do believe that by tearing down the system, they will have true equality by basically no property ownership. Nobody can have anything more than anybody else. So in other words, it's an extreme form of jealousy, I guess. But these Antifa, there are women amongst them, but they again, they go for this extreme equality, but yet the women don't usually get very high up on the ranks of these Antifa because, again, these are very extreme people. They are normally fairly cowardish. They swarm you like a like a bunch of bees, and they'll hit you and then they'll run away. They never take anybody on one-on-one. So in that sense, yes, they're very organized for that, and they also understand the strength in numbers of when they're out there damaging property and doing stuff like that. That if they're in large numbers, they're less likely to be captured by the police, whatever it might be. Now, these guys are starting to infiltrate into like the feminist movements and stuff. It's amazing what the feminist movement, the third wave feminist movement, which is now moving what I call into the fourth wave feminism, just accept all degeneracy no matter what. To them, these are the good guys. To them, that these are the underdogs, the ones that are misunderstood. To everybody else, they're just a bunch of lunatics, and they are. Now, the concept of the anti-fascist or anti-fascista, whatever, is not nothing new. But the thing is that they target anything that disagrees with them as a Nazi or a fascist. So it doesn't matter if you are a Nazi or a fascist. If you're not, it doesn't matter. To them, they view you as that. So disagreeing with them, you pay a price, and that's the way these people operate. Now, the amount of people that have been Trump supporters that have been attacked, some have been murdered. The divide and conquer in the United States right now is at never seen before. Even during the sexual revolution and the cultural revolution and all that of the '60s, and the hippie era, the flower power and all that stuff. Even as radical as that was, it's not the same type of radical. Although that is the spawning birth of a lot of this, but the thing is again the Antifa and stuff. They're even older than that. They've been around a lot longer. And obviously, being 2017, we're the 100-year anniversary of the 1917 Bolshevik Revolution, which is also birthplace of this. So when I said you're going to see the Bolsheviks 2.0, that's what I was talking about. Now, the mindset of these people is complete, utter madness. It is something, and the problem is that it's being the mainstream media basically. They did the same thing with Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter, same kind of concept, same type of people doing the same type of things, same shit, different name, right? They all kind of go, at the end of the day, they're all doing the same thing. They really don't believe in rule of law. They believe in anarchy. They really do want to tear down society. Now, the thing is that you have the mainstream media out there that always kind of, it's like, oh my God, well, Black Lives Matter, which again funded by George Soros. Again, usually these organizations like Black Lives Matter probably started up as a legitimate thing. Okay, but then again, something I've been really harping on. I really want people to look in Soviet-style ideological subversion, Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, and the Hegelian dialectic.